Hello, in this video we're going to talk about a new type of division of polynomials, which is a special way of performing polynomial division. That's via a form called synthetic division. And synthetic division and polynomial division, they do the exact same thing. They divide one polynomial into another. It's just a different process to go about doing it. Before we go ahead and do that, I just want to expand, and we'll do another similar problem. So we're going to divide x minus 4 into x squared minus 6x plus 8. So let's go ahead and do x minus 4, divide x minus 4 into x squared minus 6x plus 8. So doing this fast, we're going to say what times x gives us x squared. That's a value of x. Multiplying that through the divisor, the entire divisor, we're going to get x squared minus 4x. Since we've practiced this a couple times, this should be a little bit quicker. So we're going to subtract here. That changes our sign to a negative. This changes our sign to a positive. We're going to bring down. We're going to subtract. So we get x squared minus x squared gives you 0. Negative 6x plus 4x is a value of negative 2x. And then we're going to bring down our value of positive 8. What times x gives you negative 2x? That's a value of negative 2. And then multiplying through again by negative 2, we're going to get negative 2x, and then we're going to get a positive 8. But remember, we have to change our signs one more time. And we recognize that we get a positive here, and then this becomes a negative. So we get a remainder here. Negative 2x plus 2x gives us 0. 8 minus 8 also gives us 0. So we have a 0 remainder. Therefore, we can say this equals to x minus 2. So that is this right here is the polynomial division method. Polynomial division method. So let us go ahead and relate that to synthetic division. So remember, when we are actually dividing this longhand form, what we're doing is that we are dividing x minus 4 into x squared minus 6x plus 8. What are we actually testing? We are testing whether x minus 4 is a factor and x equals to 4 is a 0. Well, that's what we're really testing, is a 0 of x squared minus 6x plus 8. We're testing whether or not x minus 4 is a factor and whether x equals to 4 is a 0. Whether x equals to 4 is a 0. And that right there, ladies and gentlemen, is the first step, the first key to understanding the synthetic division process. So if we are asked to complete this problem, using synthetic division, synthetic division has to be set up in a certain fashion. And you're going to notice first there's going to be a little block over here to your left. And in this block, we're going to be testing the possible 0. So this right here is the test 0. I call this the test 0. It is the 0 in which we are testing. It is the 0 that we are testing. So notice here we are dividing by x minus 4. Therefore, our test 0 is a value of 4. Then our test 0 is a value of 4. We're testing to determine whether or not x equals to 4 is a 0 of this numerator, x squared minus 6x plus 8. What I like to do off to the right is that I like to remind myself what the factor is. So I usually write that a little bit smaller off to the right. So when I'm completing this problem, I know what my factor was that corresponds to that test 0. So now, once we've identified our test 0, we have to write all of our coefficients written in descending order with every term being represented. And I stress that every term being represented. So notice here that we have our x squared, our coefficient of our x squared is a value of 1. That x squared is represented in descending order. Then we have our value of x. Its coefficient is a negative 6. So his coefficient is a negative 6, just like this coefficient was a value of 1. And then lastly, we have our constant. And every term is represented in descending order. We go from the squared term to the x term to the constant. So now we write these coefficients out just like we see them. So here I have a value of positive 1, so I write out a positive 1. Here I have a value of negative 6, so I write out a value of negative 6. And then last, I have a value of positive 8. So I write out my positive 8. And now all we're going to do is perform an algorithmic process. So the first thing we're going to do is that we're going to bring down our value of the value of 1. We bring down whatever our first value is. Next thing we do is we take the test 0 and we multiply it. We multiply it times this value of 1, and this equals to 4 times 1 gives me a value of 4. And then from there on after, we're always going to add our columns. So negative 6 plus 4 gives me a value of negative 2. Doing this again, we're going to take our negative 4 and we're going to multiply it times the positive 4, multiply it times the negative 2, and that's going to equal to negative 8. And then we always add our columns. 8 minus 8 gives me a value of 0. So this 0 is our remainder. It's our remainder, just like this 0 was over here. So now this begs the question, what does this 1 and this negative 2 mean? So notice here, does everyone see this value of 1? Does everyone see this value of negative 2? That's exactly what that means. It gives us the remaining polynomial. It gives us the quotient, in fact. So we start off with a largest degree of 2. You're just going to reduce the degree by 1 until you get to the constant. So we start off with x squared. This will be a value of x the first, and this is going to be my constant term. So I'm left with 1x minus 2, which is exactly what we were left with in our quotient. So let's see if we notice any similarities throughout the problem. Notice here, we had a negative 6x and a positive 4x. Notice here, we had a negative 6 and a positive 4. Notice here, I'll do it in a different color. We'll do it in pink. We had a positive 8, and then we had a negative 8. Notice that little yellow indicator is a negative. And notice here, we had a positive 8 and a negative 8. So ultimately what we're doing is that we're just doing a rapid polynomial division method. I much prefer to use synthetic division any day. So as a summary, since our remainder is 0, we know x equals to 4, x equals to 4 is a 0. We know x equals to 4 is a 0. And x minus 4 is a factor of x squared minus 6x plus 8. So from this synthetic division, ultimately what we're testing for is we're testing for this 0. We're determining whether or not 4 or that test value is a 0 of our polynomial. How do we ultimately determine that? Is whether or not we get a remainder equal to 0. And then we're able to determine that same quotient that we, let me change the color, that same quotient that we had up here. So we're able to determine a lot from synthetic division, and it tends to be a really quick process. So I always recommend knowing how to use synthetic division, becoming fluent with it, but also depending upon your instructor, you may want to go back and forth to understand the differences between polynomial division method and the synthetic division method.